Welcome back to another edition. And we have Kristine Anthes that we had on a previous program. And Kristine is very unique in that she is a matchmaker, and that's okay. There's a certification in matchmaking. I didn't know that. You could be a certified matchmaker. What's the official title of a certified matchmaker?
Oh God, I should know this. Global Love Institute certified matchmaker, probably.
It's just certified matchmaker.
Yeah.
All right. And she adds to that process IFS, internal family systems, which takes a real look at a person's constellation of protective parts, exiles, and we've talked a lot about that. And now she is adding in an awareness around money and how those parts do money, what their money beliefs are, what their money scripts are. We talked about the four categories of money scripts: money avoidant, money worship, which is also called money focus by some these days, money status, and money vigilance. And I mean, when I think about this, I almost just get overwhelmed thinking about matching two people with in the book that I wrote called Coupleship Inc.
Right. Yeah.
We talked about the internal company, right? The internal financial system,
Right.
and how in matchmaking, I mean, you've got all the other areas, the physical compatibility, the emotional compatibility, the spiritual compatibility, and now you have the financial compatibility, and you're bringing together these two companies and
hmm
bringing together a merger, which we would call a
Right.
merger
Yeah.
in corporate language. And having been through a merger myself recently, OMG,
Yeah.
it is chaos. And that's even with some intentionality around the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious about this. As what's when do you decide? I asked you this before. When do you decide you're going to introduce somebody? I mean, you've got the landscape,
Right.
you know the money scripts, you know maybe that they're more money avoidant than money vigilant. You know the other person. How do you decide who you're going to introduce to who?
Love that. So, for example, I've had a couple of clients in the IFS Relational Wealth Blueprint who have just said the map that we've created of their parts' unmet needs, their values, their limiting beliefs, including those money scripts, has really opened their eyes. And it's helped them notice their parts in real time, before a date, during a date, and afterward. So, like, they're going on dates themselves. And then these clients, not everyone, but I've had a few, will say, okay, I'm ready for matchmaking. I know my parts. And I can sort of do that U-turn thing that you've helped me with. And I'll say, okay, have you met with an IFS therapist that I recommended? It's not required, but it's highly recommended. And some have and some haven't. But regardless of that, I'll say, hey, do you remember when we first started working together? And in the intake, I asked you about your relationship history. And there was a part of you who was overly generous. How is that part now? And the person will say, like, I have another part who hates that part, but I have like sufficient access to self. I feel curiosity and I feel appreciation for it. And I'll say, okay, how do you think it's going to show up when I match you with somebody? And I'm like, not quite sure. Like,
Mhm.
let's see. Um, and often that part shows up before I even curate a date for them. I'll talk to them about somebody I think who is potentially compatible. And there's this reflex of, well, I'm not so sure this person's right for me. They maybe don't have the career, the financial background that I'm really looking for. I want somebody to pay for everything. And they're like, whoops, okay, that's that part of me talking. So I don't know that there's a clear line about when they're what my goal is, relationship ready. That can take time, but it doesn't have to be complete before I start matching them because the lived experience of noticing these parts before, just when I talk to them about a potential match, before, during, and after a date helps them really start to feel like, oh my gosh, that part did get activated, and I could or I couldn't really do a U-turn in the moment.
Yes. So what I hear you doing, Kristine, is really raising awareness.
Hmm.
And it's not that, okay, I'm healed, like at the end of our last session. Um, well, I got to be earning so much, or I got to be doing this job, or whatever it is before I'm ready, which, to your point, there is a manager running that. You want to bring awareness to that manager, to what's going on, to the internal dynamics, so they can just be simply aware of it when it comes up in the relationship and be able to um, process that. Well, just to be aware of it. I mean, awareness is so much of the journey.
It is, and I would drop it down a little bit more to that protector's intention. Because again and again, we see that clients, whether they be therapy clients or my matchmaking clients, come in, their presenting problem is to get rid of one of their parts,
Mm,
usually
right,
from a manager that doesn't like a firefighter and so on. And I would really want to honor the part that's maybe pushing away the blueprint service. It's trying to protect someone from feeling
right.
vulnerable, shame, or something like that. Um, and again, really consistent with IFS is that we're not trying to get rid of those parts. They have gifts. They're part of our internal family system. Why would we want to shun them? We want to help them release their burdens, the protector's burdens about what they think they have to do to stave off the exile and the exile's false beliefs.
And that, yeah, that's the beauty of IFS. So when you've got two people and you've introduced them to each other, are they coming back to you having sessions after the date during this process?
If both people are my clients, then yes. If one person is my client and one person is another matchmaker's client, then I just work with my client. I have found that other matchmakers' clients get kind of intrigued because I spend time with them before I match them with my client. And then they're like, "Oh, I think I might be interested in that too."
Okay, so do you have a network of matchmakers that share
Yes, I have.
clients and
Yeah.
needs?
Hmm.
Okay. So another matchmaker has person A that you've looked at saying this could be a match.
Right.
And then you will work with them because obviously, coming from that other matchmaker, they haven't done the IFS relational wealth blueprint. So
But
I'm guessing, do you ask them to do that then?
I do. I spend extensive time talking to them. because
Okay.
because it otherwise I think it would be really disrespectful to my client. If my client is coming to me because they too value emotional and financial compatibility or emotional, but they maybe didn't realize and then they really appreciate the importance of financial compatibility. I don't want to match them with somebody who's maybe not self-aware, who doesn't value growth, who's got
Exactly.
these strong protectors and so on.
Right. Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. Um, when did when in the dating relationship, this is a question you can't answer. when in the dating relationship do you tell them to start talking about money?
Oh, yeah, I can't tell them that. Unfortunately, as we know, we can't tell our clients what to do, or we can, but it often doesn't, like happen.
What's
Um,
optimum?
there's research that shows the earlier that a couple, or even if they're not yet a couple, they're dating, they might not consider themselves a couple, but the earlier they have financial decisions, excuse me, financial discussions, the healthier their relationship long term. So I encourage it really early on.
That is fascinating.
Mhm. Because if it goes unnoticed, if it goes unnamed, I I I think that these patterns, these rigid behaviors, these, false beliefs and so on perpetuate themselves.
What's the reaction to your clients to that when you suggest that, or do you suggest that to them? What's are they pretty open by now to that? Like, oh, okay, cool. I'll ask him how much he makes and what he's worth on the second date.
I wouldn't recommend that. What I would recommend is that people start discussing their values early on. And those could bring up financial values. And if they don't, then maybe kind of asking about those sooner rather than later. Values such as growth, you mentioned intentionality, that's really important. Um, Care for others, and so on. And then values regarding finances might eventually come in. And if they don't come in, one of the questions I ask in my intake is, what do you spend money on? And that can sometimes shed light on parts and their specific strategies, say like protectors, um, and what they're trying to achieve with those strategies. And like eventually later on, kind of similar to IFS and IFIO, this isn't always happening, but it can be timely, it can be really apt if a person's like shared the relationship history, really wants to do things differently, is noticing how they get activated the before, during, after kind of thing.
When is there any encouragement from you in this process of saying, well, have you talked about money?
Yes. hmm What, so the matchmaking service in particular, I can speak to this with the blueprint as well, but I think it's clearer with the matchmaking. It involves monthly meetings with me, pre-date preparation, how they can anticipate how their parts might get activated, a post-date meeting, where they provide feedback to me on how they think it went. If they want to see the person again, I also receive post-date feedback from the other person, and I share that post-date feedback with the first person, which is really valuable because they wouldn't receive that feedback otherwise directly from the person, but they can hear it from me.
Okay, sure.
So at that point, I'll say, how do you think our work, if they haven't already mentioned it, and I often do, but if they haven't already mentioned it, I'll say, how do you think our work, talking about your parts' beliefs, their money scripts, and so on, did or did not show up here? And usually they did. If they didn't, I'll say, okay, going forward, it sounds like you want to see this person again. You would like another date. The research shows that discussing finances sooner rather than later results in healthier relationships. I'm not necessarily, you ask the person, um, like their whole financial history on the second date, but it's something that maybe can come up if you want to bring up, like, hey, what do you value in life? Here are some of my values. And sometimes that can generate values that are related to resources, finances in particular, or other kinds of resources. Um, so one in particular, that's really noteworthy is the value of generosity. For some people, generosity is financial generosity. For other people, it's financial, but it's also emotional generosity. For others, it's emotional generosity, this openness and this curiosity. So if somebody is really annoying us, the generosity to say, like, oh, that person might be having a hard day, even without a parts perspective of like, oh, that might be somebody's protector and so on. So really encouraging my clients pre-date and especially post-date to bring up values, which can often generate values related to finances. We'll bring that in. And that way it feels more self-led. There's an ease to it
Right.
rather than
Right.
interviewing the person, a manager
Yes,
interviewing a person for finances.
that makes sense. Now, do you know the net worth and the income of both people?
I ask about that in the intake interview.
The intake. So you know
Mhm.
that. Do you let the person know that up front or before?
Many people will ask for it, and I don't state that. And I tell them, and this is a question I get from a lot of people, not just clients. How do you match people based on physical compatibility, other things? And I'll talk about how emotional and financial are the most important. But to me, the most thing that creates long-term compatibility is psychological flexibility. For example, we've talked about money scripts and the extent to which our parts hold on to those script categories, either very rigidly or a little bit more flexibly. Does that answer the question, though?
Well, that what I'm hearing you say is that's really important marker of compatibility is not necessarily what the money script is, but is there flexibility around the money script, which
Right.
in my language would probably say they've done some reframing of the money script.
Yes,
It isn't
indeed.
an is always never will. There's a may in there or a can or some type of flexibility.
Right. And then that's maybe not always clear. So I'll give an example. Like I have a client who really wants to know the net worth of somebody that I'm asking them to consider as a potential match. And I'll say, like, I can understand why you want to know. At the same time, what if that person has a really high net worth, but they maybe also spend it all?
Mhm.
And often that is met with like, oh my gosh, I was with somebody like that, or that's my brother-in-law. And like, oh, Kristine, maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't be focusing on financial resources. And then I'll refer them back to the money scripts assessment that they did early with me and talk about how that has maybe played out given the relationship history I know and how that potentially could play out in the future if they're just kind of and and maybe this isn't fair. I don't think it's always a really intense manager scanning. I think sometimes it is. Um, but a manager may be prioritizing signals of financial stability, financial generosity, high net worth, and so on. And they realize, like, oh, yeah, maybe that isn't a good idea.
Do you find any relationship in say two people that have an equal net worth? Are they potentially going to be any more successful than a mismatched where one has more money and one has a smaller net worth?
That's a wonderful question. For me, no, because if they both have a high net worth, and we've talked about this on our paper, they may both have parts who carry money avoidance script categories. And you made that beautiful metaphor of they're both paddling in a canoe in bliss, and then they don't realize there's a devastating waterfall coming. Or your other example was that they both have money vigilant scripts, and everything seems compatible because they talk about money a lot, they track things, they have similar values, and it does sound great. Yet at the same time, it might like consistently raise their anxiety so that they can't enjoy the money that they do have. They maybe can't enjoy the journey in that kind of canoe ride.
So from your perspective, it's the inner awareness. Somebody comes to you, as you said, that says, I only want to date somebody that has a net worth of over this or somewhere in the range that my net worth is in.
Hmm.
You're you're going to invite them to take a deeper look at the protectors, then have that money script and money scripts around what's driving that desire, what's behind that desire to have an equal net worth. And what pops into my mind right now is what about prenups?
Hmm.
Um, is that, I assume that's something that you discuss with clients right up front, where they might say, um, I want a prenup. And that's a whole new area to negotiate.
Right. And that's something that I would refer out. I did it already for one couple. Refer out to an IFIO couples therapist because that's something that I think their their parts kind of in that dynamic of like both of them want one or one of them wants one, that the silo of talking to each person about the parts involved, whether they want one or don't want one, to me is not really effective. That's an IFS therapy where they're noticing the parts who get
Mm-hmm.
activated around a prenup, have to have one, don't want one, and that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I insisted on a prenup on my second marriage. And as an advisor, I recommend them, quite often. And
Mhm.
it was a very enlightening process because my fiance at the time was like, yeah, that's good with me. I'm not marrying you because of your money. And as we progressed in the talks, and of course we didn't know IFS back then, all sorts of parts came up,
Mhm.
and we ended up not having a prenup.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's
Which
the
I
part.
had all sorts of parts like were like, you imposter. You tell everybody else to get one, and now you end up not getting one.
And yet, you know, your relationship is different from the hat you're wearing professionally. Rick, would have an IFIO couples therapist helped at that moment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think we were I think we were seeing a therapist during that period of time, but the IFIO process would have helped a lot. And for me, what helped me eventually, a part of me got some knowledge that, we neither one of us have kids,
Okay.
which is a big reason why to have prenups often. And so, and in South Dakota, once you're married 10 years, it's 50-50 anyway.
Okay.
And so that information was helpful to my part that was like, we're going to have a prenup. And we're going to have a prenup because I would be such a fraud if I didn't have one. I mean, that was a huge message
Sure.
to
Yeah.
that part of me, uh, that we finally were helpful in getting that part to relax, to say, maybe this situation isn't that important.
That's it.
And
That's a shift.
and for her, it was like, geez, this is starting to feel more like a business relationship. Well,
Mhm.
it is.
Mhm. Couples Inc.
Exactly right.
Hmm.
So that's a helpful awareness process for couples to realize that we are coming into a financial relationship, we are coming into a business relationship, and we do need to address everything about that, interior, exterior, how decisions will be made,
And
a number.
and and where I want to linger, not just in the conversation right now, but with my work, what I'm contributing is, to me, what you said, the inner, the outer relationship. To me, when I help people have better inner relationships, they'll have better outer relationships.
Oh, totally, totally. I mean, super important. Well, we have come to the end of our time again. So much to explore. And
Yes.
this is so fascinating. I am sure that my listeners will find a lot of this helpful, especially those who are dating. And what a field to explore. Um, yeah. So, where can people find you that are interested in learning more about your work?
People who are dating, people who are recently divorced, people who are dating and they keep maybe not noticing, but somehow like eventually realizing they're stuck in the same pattern. They keep being attracted to the same type of person, or what we think of as the same time of same part. And the people who work with them um, can really benefit. Um, so my website is all my information, my services are there. It's IFS dating and matchmaking.com. IFS dating and matchmaking.com.
Just so fascinating. And like we said, we're committing all of this to paper. And that's a fascinating project. I have just been fascinated about the marriage of IFS money and dating and what a service and what a needed service. From time to time, I have watched some of the dating reality shows, and a part of me is just amazed that they don't have a financial therapist or anybody talking about money as part of the program, and how little the money is discussed. So I
To
think a
me,
phenomenal service.
to me, that's an example of how raising awareness, our consciousness of that which we haven't noticed or named really is vital for long-term compatibility.
So important.
Yeah.
Kristine, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.